first granddaughter was born, a dream came. It was a powerful dream. And in that dream, my great-great-granddaughters came to me. And they said, "Great-grandfather, what did you do as Mother Earth was being unraveled?" Like so many things we've heard today, ideas, thoughts. That dream gave me a thought. That thought was, how could I use my camera to maybe make a witness, to maybe educate? So I started to look at this idea of a question of power. And over and over and over again, I came up with the same thing. 5 pounds of coal per day. What was that all about? That's how much each one of us individually burned to create the electricity we use. We talked about ideas. That thought, that research, led to a project I've started in a nonprofit called Question of Power. Question of Power is not about the environment as much as it is about us. Human stories about people who are exposed to the mining, the production, the consumption, and the big one today, the waste materials that are created in the production of electricity. Did you all know that today we are creating over 170 million tons of highly toxic coal ash a year in the United States? 33 states are full of it. 33. So I want to talk a little bit about, I want to share 4 stories with you today. We're going to start right here in our homeland, right in New Mexico. We have 2 of the dirtiest coal-burning power plants in the United States. And living within that area are the Dene, or the Navajo people. Alice Gilmore turns away from a blast that she experiences at her home 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. A haul road where vehicles haul coal up and down all day long. Not only in some areas is a haul road used for coal, it's also the main access for school buses. It's also the main roadway for all the local residents. Lucy Willie, way of life, people's culture, your way of life, my way of life. Here at her winter sheep grazing camp, soon to be lost with the new mine that will move through the area. The Navajo people are incredible. They've been here for a long time, over 1,500 years. Sheep are a big way of life, a big cultural way of life. Everything from young children to old, the process of raising sheep, the process of shearing, the art, the beauty of that process is handed down time to time. Here, Lucille Willie shears by hand, 30 sheep a day. Beautiful, beautiful. And it brings the family together in lots of different ways. But that's changing. Strip mine, taking up the grazing permits. Grazing permits disappearing. I talked to a lot of elders. I had an opportunity to spend hours and hours and hours in hogans. Johnny White, born and raised, 82 years old. This is his hogan. He has no running water. He has no electricity. He has no telephone. Yes, you see a TV set. TV set's battery powered, battery's long since gone. He has very little voice in what goes on. The goal of my work is to bring a voice to the people who don't have a voice. Jim Mason, very powerful medicine man, told me incredible stories about how the acid rain comes down, destroyed all the ceremonial plants. The water's been polluted. My sheep can no longer drink the water. They have nothing to graze. When they set the dynamite off, it explodes in Mother Earth. And as that mine moves closer and closer to Jim's place, his hogan, in that lower corner, this, a year later, is what happened. His hogan broke apart. Compensated? No. Told he can move? Yes. He's on the reservation, but he's on a permit. Permit that's issued by OSM, Office of Service Mining. What about water? We all need water. Our bodies are made up of a big part of that. Most of the people have to drive on average, and we're talking Burnham, New Mexico, okay? This is just out our back door. People drive on average 50 miles to get potable water. How do they do that? They put a 55-gallon drum in the back of their pickup truck 3 times a week. What about children? On average, 1 member of every family on that Navajo Nation, under those coal-burning power plants, close to those mines, has either asthma or lung cancer. Brain cancer increasing in children 47% in the last 10 years. Stories are difficult, no written word, but oral history is an important part. Alice Gilmore shares those stories with Bonnie, her daughter, telling us what it was like before the mines were there, what it was like when they had their sheep, what it was like when they shared with their families. Tension within families, 3 generations. Lucy, Willie, Lucille, Yazzie, they have no idea when they'll receive a knock on the door of their home and they'll say, you have to move because the mine's coming through here. But you know, the positive side is the power of women, power of the Navajo women particularly. 3 women I've worked with, I've had the honor to work with over the past 4 or 5 years. They stood up. They came to New Mexico, they came to the state legislature, and they said, no, we don't want this new power plant. I don't know if you heard about Desert Rock Power Plant. We were up for a 3rd one. That 3rd power plant in our state of New Mexico would have set our air quality back 50 years. 50 years. These women came day after day after day with the elders to the state legislature. And you know what the state legislature said? They said, we've never seen this happen before. The energy company was asking for a $65 million tax break from the state of New Mexico, didn't get it. And a power plant may not happen because of 3 women. The power of an idea. At the same time, they started some excavation on some grazing permits. And the elders, including Lucy, spent one of the coldest winters in a resistance camp. And Lucy told me, she said, I'm staying here. She says, I'm staying here until it's over, and then I go home. Otherwise, I stay here. Lucy's husband, Ambrose, very powerful medicine man, better known as a singer, Vietnam vet, Purple Heart, lungs highly damaged by Agent Orange in Vietnam. Last November, at night, by the way, what the power plants do is they blow the stacks. That means that all the stuff goes up in the dark of night. In the dark of night, when it went up one night, last November, Ambrose woke up and couldn't breathe. Lucy tried to find him a bed in a VA hospital in New Mexico, Arizona, and Colorado. None were available. She took him to a small private hospital in Colorado, and she slept in the cab of her pickup truck every night for 2 weeks because there wasn't a bed for her until he passed. Ambrose's last wish, he told me, he said, I want to be buried with my family on my homeland. When Lucy went and tried to do that, they told her, you can't do that because the mine will be through here and he'll get dug up. Plain and simple. 3 generations. All about electricity. Now there's not a father, there's not a husband, and there's no grandma. But Lucy has an idea. And her idea is if I keep a strong voice, if I let the message get out, people will care. December 22nd, 2008. Maybe you heard about it, maybe you didn't. A little blurb on the news. Largest environmental disaster of its kind in the history of our country. Kingston, Tennessee. 3.5 million cubic yards of toxic fly ash go into 3 major rivers.
This is the biggest disaster of its kind in American history. Nobody really grasps that. My name is Rick Cantrell. I live here in Kingston. Now what you're looking at should be nothing but water, beautiful property, big docks, boathouses. TVA is in here right now cleaning up around the banks. But we have no idea what they're going to do with this. Preliminary, they said they were going to hose the sludge back out into the river, catch it with booms, suck it up with vacuum cleaners, level this out as much as possible, and cover it with fertilizer and grass seed. I'm sentimental about this area we're standing on right now. I spent many months sitting on that destroyed dock, catching catfish all night long. I get emotional because this makes me mad. I'm no environmentalist. I've told that to everybody. But first, this could have been preventable. They're going to do the cost-effective way. They're going to make it not look so bad and cover it up. The United States of America cannot let this go unpunished, and they cannot let lack of cleanup stand.
My name is Matt Landon. I'm a full-time volunteer staff person with United Mountain Defense. What we're finding is that the levels of toxins and pollutants that TVA has been reporting and the other state and federal agencies have been reporting have not been the true limits that are actually what is out there in the coal ash. We've distributed over 250 gallons of bottled water to local residents that were requesting this. We were meeting people that were vomiting from drinking the water before it was boiled. This is the unreported story here in Harriman, Tennessee.
So 10 days after this event, the EPA had come in, but TVA, since it's really a federal agency, which is self-regulatory, told EPA to go home. So the EPA went home. So I went back 5 months later, and I saw Rick. And I said, Rick, what's happened? He said, well, they put up some plastic fencing, and they tried to hydroseed the area. I said, are they telling people that this may be very toxic material that they're living in? He said, no, they're still saying it's fine. 2 weeks later, the EPA came back in. They immediately declared the area a Superfund site. Superfund site has fairly extensive connotation, all right? So they started a massive cleanup because now the time had passed and the fly ash was not only in 3 major rivers, it had worked its way all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, okay? So they started a massive cleanup, and a massive cleanup job it was. So they had to get dredges into the river to dredge out the fly ash. They had to bring the fly ash on land, dry it out. That didn't include the fly ash that was still on land. And the interesting thing is that Duke University came in, of course, with an independent study and told the New York Times what was in coal ash. And coal ash has all of, you probably all know, but once again, just to refresh your memory, has high levels of mercury, selenium, cadmium, all of the heavy players, all of the toxic carcinogenics, okay? So they came in and they started a massive cleanup. And I must say, the other thing that I thought that was very interesting, as I went through the community, all of a sudden I started to see signs on houses. This house was now owned by TVA. That house was now owned by TVA. And I saw complete communities locked up. Streets where kids used to be playing, where people used to walk their dog every morning. TVA came in and bought 130 homes. And yet, remember, fly ash is not hazardous. They needed to do something with it. They kept it watered down continually, and to their credit, they did an incredible job. But the biggest problem was, what do we do with this? And so as you went on-site and off-site in the vehicles went through 3 car washes. I had to have my boots scrubbed, tie-back clothing, everything, which was great. It's the way it should be. But they had no place to put this fly ash. And so what they said is, we need to find a place that we can send this. And so they decided that they would take rail cars, they would create these burrito wrappers, wrap up the fly ash so it didn't escape, and they would rail it 300 miles south to Alabama to a little town called Uniontown, 30 miles from Selma. Uniontown has 86% unemployment. It has an average income, family income of $8,000. I met Jesse there, and I said, what's going on? He says, I don't know. He said, you know, people here think we don't want to work. We do. But we're concerned now that they're bringing this fly ash into our community. It's a wonderful community. Community rich in history, rich in spiritual belief, rich in community. I met Reverend Murdoch. He told me, he says, I don't understand what's happening to us. He said, you know, he said, they said on the, when they were going to bring this in, that nobody lived close to this place where they were going to dump it. Nobody lived within 2.5 miles. He says, get in my truck with me. I got in this truck. We drove 70 odometer, drove that 2.5 miles, and within that 2.5 miles, I counted over 200 homes where people were living. Arrowhead landfill, where it ended up. Goes by rail. Once it goes by, oh, by the way, this was level ground. This was level, that's all fly ash. Those are people living right in front of the fly ash. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 88 rail cars a day going to Uniontown. Benny Carter said to me, he said, man, he said, something's wrong here. It was right across the street from the pit. There's something wrong. I said, what's wrong, Benny? He says, man, I put my clothes out on the line to wash them, put my shirts on and they itch. He says, then I get rashes all over my arms. He says, I don't know what's wrong. He said, I moved, but he says, you know what? I don't have any place to go. This is my home. Dora Williams took me out for a little walk. We're just right across the road from her house. This is a drainage ditch. Black fly ash is right there. You can see it in the upper corner. She said, every time it rains, stuff washes down. Some independent people came and did a study. They showed that the water in those ditches had arsenic levels that were over 400 times safe levels. Track it into her house, she said. Can't plant my gardens. You know, she said it's a terrible thing. On the roads. Ruby Holmes. She lives right across the street. These are real people. These are like you and I. I live right across the street. She says, I have to wash my car every time I go out, just to keep the fly ash out. She told me, she says, Carlan, she said, it's a terrible thing. She says, we don't know what to do. We don't have a voice. Nobody cares about us. We don't have much. So I guess they don't think we're worth much. Coal ash. Terrible thing. Terrible. 2 weeks ago, Koshi, Oklahoma. Made a little trip. Read a little interesting story about Koshi. Said that population of 450 people, they had an astronomical level of asthma and all kinds of cancer. All kinds. Including really bad cases of emphysema. So I went to Koshi. I knew that, by the way, they were dumping ash from the Sandy Point power plant into Koshi, and the interesting thing is, had been dumping ash there for 10 years. So I have to tell you, the folks in Koshi are incredible. This is Sassy's Place Cafe. I drive up, don't know a soul. In 10 minutes, they've got coffee in front of me. It made me feel like a long best friend. Incredible people. Small community. But I noticed an interesting thing as I sat in that cafe. About every 3 or 4 minutes, trucks would make that turn. Trucks carrying coal ash. 80 trucks a day carrying coal ash. That coal ash is being dumped into some old mine pits that some private individuals came in and bought, and under the auspices of permitting through the federal government, got mine reclamation permits. And the interesting thing is, you want to know the name of the company? The name of the company is Making Money, Having Fun. That's the name of their company. It's not a joke. And so I started to talk more with people. And I met Charles Tackett. He says, come out to my house. He says, you got to have some beans and ham with me. And I believe if you're in Bocosha, you got to stop and see Charles. He makes the best beans and ham I ever had in my life. But he said, stand in my front yard with me. Every 2 or 3 minutes, these trucks go by. He said, you know, I've got congestive heart problems. I have to sleep with O2 at night. He said, because I'm constantly in this dust. He said, look at this. He showed me the filters from his house. Has changed these filters about every 30 days. Completely clogged with coal ash. Completely clogged. Plants, vegetation, everything covered, no exaggeration. Sue Hudson, sweet, wonderful, beautiful woman, 82 years old. She told me about how she lost her husband. And then just last year, one morning her daughter got up, said, Mom, I feel like I have the flu. I don't feel too good. Took her to the hospital. She had more and more trouble breathing. Took her to the hospital. 17 days later, she died of lung cancer. Dan Reese, wonderful school teacher there. Boy, the salt of the earth teacher. Teaches 6th grade. She and a close friend of hers for 2 years rode their bicycles around the neighborhood. Every day, went out for a bicycle ride. Her friend is now passed with cancer, and Diane is in remission from both colon cancer and breast cancer. Doesn't ride her bike anymore. She said to me, she said, Carlan, she says, come to my classroom. I said, I'd love to. Thank you, Diane. She took me into her classroom. She has 17 6th graders. 17. Out of those 17, 9 have acute asthma. When she said, can you raise your hand and tell us what it's like to have an asthma attack? Have you ever heard a 6th grader tell you what it feels like when they can't breathe anymore? That'll make you stop and think. Joe Pickle. Perfect health, she told me. Perfect health. But she said every morning when we get up, our cars and our house are covered with fly ash. 2 years ago, she came down with acute lung problems. She's on O2 24 hours a day. And by the way, look at the filter that filters the air that's coming. This is an additional filter in her house, in her room, filled with ash. She changes it every couple of weeks. I've been making these pictures up. I walk in, I pick up my camera, and I make a picture. It affects a lot of parts of the body. Young 16-year-old girl, toxic poisoning goes into the joints. Her goal and her dream was to be a massage therapist. Toxic poisoning so bad in the joints of her hands that her goal and her dream has been diminished. 80 trucks a day, high levels of cancer, high levels of emphysema, high levels of asthma. Not an unusual story if you look at it. Stories over and over again that you hear across our land. The idea that I hope I can leave you with today here is a positive one. And that idea is that what we do today as a generation, as a unity of people, will affect what our great-great-grandchildren experience 7 generations from